Hello, I'm Raimonds Simanovskis, and I come from far away, from Jurmala, so nowadays I don't visit Riga so much, so thanks for this great opportunity to visit this beautiful city. And today I'm going to talk about how to analyze and visualize your Git log for fun and profit. So I need to warn that there will be more fun and less profit, so be warned. I'm rsim on Twitter and GitHub if you want to follow me. I gave this talk initially 3 years ago at Ruby on Rails conference in the United States, and then I needed to fit this content into 5 minutes, so I could be much more relaxed. I have 15 minutes for that, so I can speak slowly, but I have more content, more examples. We probably use a lot of code metrics to analyze our code, like lines of code, cyclomatic complexity, test coverage, duplication of code. But all these metrics are mostly concerning the current static snapshot of our code. But our code is not static, so it changes a lot. And there probably is a lot of knowledge that we can learn about our code from our commit log. So either from Git commit log, so which you probably all of you should use now, or also from some ancient version control systems as well. And in the year 2011, also in Ruby on Rails conference, I heard a talk by Michael Feathers and Corey Haynes about mining Rails, learning from your app's lifetime, and I was interested into that and to play around it, so what you can learn from your Git commit log or from some other applications' Git commit log. And as at that time I was starting to work on my own business intelligence application, EasyBI, where you can load some data and then do some charts, reports, dashboards out of that. So I was interested, so let's try to use this tool for analyzing Git commit log as well. And in EasyBI, you can do the analysis using the so-called this multi-dimensional analysis approach. That you can imagine that we have a multi-dimensional data cube with many dimensions, like, for example, if we Git commit log, so we could analyze it by authors, then by files which we are changing, then by time period when we do that. And then inside these cells of this data queue, we have different measures, like, for example, of commits made, how many lines were added or how many lines were deleted. And then we could, from our commit, we can extract even more dimensions, like file extensions, or these are file types, whether these are some code files or documentation and things like that, or individual commits. Or also we can look, if we have some multinational project, we can analyze by time zones, also by hour of the day, or by weekday, and see whether we can extract some interesting information out of that. And so initially, also as I did it the talk for RailsConf, so I started with, as example, with Ruby on Rails public commit log. So here is the history of all Ruby on Rails commit log. So it started in year 2004. And you see this background area, so it is calculated total lines of code, so how the whole code base was growing. Then the orange line of number of commits, so how it was changing over how many commits per quarter in this case. And then greens are how many additions of code lines, and red how many deletions of the code lines. As well as we can see some calculated metrics as changes per commit, so whether within one commit you are changing a lot of things or a smaller number of things. So these are everything stored in this Git repository. Let's focus just on Ruby files and see what's there. And so here we see the brief overview of Ruby on Rails history, where you can see already some main timeline events. So it was birth of Rails in 2004, and then we see that some large commits which add a lot of data there. Then around year 2008 and 2009, So there's this great Rails version 3 refactoring, as when some new guys came and wrote everything, refactored everything. So you see these green and red bars over there. And then later it stabilizes, but so what I noticed that there are some peaks in the second quarter of each year. So that's because in the spring there is a RailsConf in States happening, and so therefore for the RailsConf, so people are doing more active commits to finish something before the annual conference. Let's take a look on some individual contributions. So this is a famous person by abbreviation DHH, or Heinemann Hansen, so who's the creator of Rails. So it was mentioned in the keynote as well. So he made this sometimes controversial blog posts, including unit testing. And so here we see his contribution. So we see that in the year 2008, so he did everything by himself. So he was a lone creator of Ruby on Rails. Then, so he let other people contribute to the code later, so his contribution diminished. But then, so he was quite successful with this 37 signals, and which made Basecamp. And so he started to code less and got some new hobbies. So he's quite well-known race car driver now, and so we see that so their contributions were diminishing. But then in year 2011, so he signed up for a new for keynote at RailsConf, telling about some feature in Rails static asset pipeline, and so we see that so he realized so he now needs to do a lot of things again. But in recent years, so he understands so that was a bad idea, and so now he mostly makes general talks about why unit testing is bad, when he's not doing any coding anymore. Let's have a look at some current top contributors of Ruby on Rails. So these are current top contributors in the current year. And so here is interesting that I selected top 10 contributors to Ruby on Rails. So in total, there are hundreds of contributors each year. But so we still see that in the last year, contributions by number of commits were made by 10 people. So please honor always in the projects which you are using that quite often just a couple people are making the majority of the work. But let's have in more details, so who are these persons? And I sorted them by number of comments. But then I noticed some other things that actually some people are doing bad things. So they are deleting, so their net contribution, so they're deleting more code, adding more code. So probably they should let contributing, and maybe we just need to pray who are doing a net positive contribution. Well, yeah, that's a joke, but in reality, quite often when analyzing that, you can see there's some patterns that some people are maybe more productive adding new code, but some are productive and doing good work on refactoring and improving existing things. And then when you will look at their net contribution, probably it will be around 0 or even negative, as sometimes deleting code is a good thing. But let's focus on one well-known Rubyist, Aaron Patterson, who has been in this top list for many years. So he also typically likes to do a lot of refactorings. So I looked at his individual contributions, but I looked differently by the hour of the day when he's working. What I found out, so he's actually very disciplined developer, so 9-to-5 developer as I call him, so would be a good corporate citizen. So he starts at 8 a.m. Or 9 a.m. and warms up with some small commits. And then over the day, so at 12 p.m., so he goes and has a lunch. And then around 8, 7, so he finishes work and so then does some socializing. So he has 2 cats, so he needs to take care of. With this example, I also wanted to tell that, well, if you Google Aaron Patterson, so then you will probably see some different and strange pictures. So don't judge someone by their appearance. So his Twitter handle is Tender Love. Yeah, so that's his profile picture. So he had some photo session. I don't know, about what. And he was training for some running 5K run. And then, so it was his Christmas pictures, or when sometimes he does some refactoring, he puts his magic wand hat, then does his appearance. But so, yeah, when evaluating developers, don't sometimes look at their weird pictures or weird behavior. So look what's their commit history. If I compare Aaron to other popular guy, which is Jose Valim, so he was initially quite popular Ruby on Rails, Ruby developer, but in recent years, so he's more famous Elixir programming language, what he created. But if I look at some 3 years ago, so in 2012, so this chart, his contributions by hour of the day are quite different. So it seems that he's working all night, and so then during the start of the day, his contributions decreased, and at that time, so he started already work more on the Elixir, so probably so during the time he was more working on Elixir programming language, and then at the end of the day, so probably when you are bored, so you just start get angry and then delete a lot of code. But to compare, I compared his contributions to Elixir programming language, which started in 2011. So this was already looking better, but then in 2012, so it was different. Then 2013, 2014, 2015. So do you see any pattern? I don't. But so probably he's still trying to find his best pattern on how to work. But well, he's a genius and a smart guy, so I hope he will not burn out, like working like that for many years. Okay, let's have a different angle how you can look on the commits. So unfortunately, it's hard to do some geolocation of commits in a global project. So the only good statistic probably you can get by, for example, by time zones. And then by time zones, so we see that in this year, so the top contributing countries are based on the time zones were US West Coast, Brazil, Europe, Japan, and India. But actually, Brazil, so it's kind of cheating because this one top person currently, so he's doing all of that. So he's from Brazil, and so therefore, so he's helping the whole country to beat others. So he's doing more than the whole Europe in terms of commits. Let's have one more different look how you can take a look on that. So it's by weekdays. And so here we see that still in open source projects, so you work all on weekends. But let's focus on Fridays, what's happening on Fridays. Let's drill into that and what's happening on Fridays by the hour of the day. So one interesting thing that I noticed is that around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., so the commits go down, so probably everyone on Friday evening is having a beer. And of course, after the beer, so starts beer-driven development. That's a joke, but so when I told it initially, then several contributors later came to me and said, it's actually the practice in their office, that in the Friday nights, so they get beer, pizza, and then they do some open source work. So it's real facts how it happens. Okay, so let's move to some other examples. Let's go at Linux. And so, you know that Linus Torvalds created both Linux and as well as Git. It's quite huge repository, so it's more than 500,000 commits, 20 million lines of code, 70 million lines of changes, 40,000 contributors. So I think that it was created Linux to test Git performance. So if anyone tells that Git doesn't scale, you can show a Linux example. And so I also this changed over time, and so what I noticed that some strange things. So the first thing is on 1st of January 1970, and the last commit is on year 2037, which is just before the end of the world, which will happen on 2038, when the 32-bit overflow will happen. Well, time will stop. So it doesn't control any data quality. And so the example is just that when sometimes you visualize the data, you can also data inaccuracies there. And then I can also see there was a huge commit on 2005. And so Linus just decided, well, let's not bother with importing all the previous history. Well, I'll just copy it in, and maybe I'll do that later. So sometimes maybe if someone asks to import some historical data, just reference to Linus Torvalds, that he didn't do that for Linux as well. Yeah, so regarding, if you look at what are top changed files in Linux, you probably would think that there should be something about the kernel, process scheduling, memory management, but actually it's not so. So if we see that well, something related to that process scheduling is not the top files, so the top files are maintainers, yeah, so which is quite huge list, so which is most frequently changed. And then, so people just trying to understand how this Intel graphics card is working, or how to patch this Realtek sound card, so it finally works. But so when you look at your code base, sometimes it's good to find out, so which are the frequently changed files, as this is typically some smell if they're changing too much. Okay, let's move quickly through the other projects. So the Quest, what is this large C++ C assembler project with some JavaScript components? Any guesses? Really? You have heard this today. It's Node.js. But when I looked at this initially, so I was a little bit suspicious. Well, really, 4 million lines of code? Node.js? No, so because I looked at, so there's 2 large dependency folders, so they also decided, well, it's just easier to copy all dependencies inside the Git repository, and let's not bother with that. So if, sometimes if someone tells that don't do that, well, just reference to Node.js, they're doing that. As if we remove these dependencies, then it looks more like JavaScript project with core part in C++, and then this is this history just around 2,000 lines of code. Then if we look at top contributors in Node.js, so one thing also regarding data inaccuracy, I noticed that the creator of Node.js, Ryan Dahl, is actually represented twice there, because initially he used just his name, Ryan, these Git commits. He thought this is already a long name, as his GitHub handle just Ry, so then Ryan is his full name. And then this second top contributor, Isaac Schluster, is also not giving his full name. But what I noticed, what are some tendencies in JavaScript projects, that, well, there people are working quite actively, and then at some point, so they just are burned out and they leave the project. So the creator of Node.js, Ryan Dahl, has just in 2012, just left the project. And then the second one, the Isaac Schluter, took over the project, and then for a couple of years, and then he left the project as well, but so continued on Node package management. And so if we looked at some other JavaScript projects, jQuery, of course, there's John Resig, also data inconsistencies there. But if we look at John Resig contribution to jQuery, also after some, well, probably 5 years, it's maximum which you can stand programming in JavaScript. So then you are leaving that. Okay, and if we look at the example, so next to me, Alexei Vladishev is presenting about Zabbix, and so I just took Zabbix history as well. And so Alexei claims that he created this project, but looking at top contributors, I found out that the creator and top huge Toad. And so he started at 2011, and then in 2006 left, and then probably Alexei took over this project. So that's the best picture that I could find of huge Toad on the internet. Okay, and finally I'm closing with just a bonus WTF episode from yesterday. So I analyzed the Git commit log of our repositories, and I found quite interesting duplicates. So so I see that all the Yanis are duplicated, the Martis are duplicated. So those who are not Latvian. So Yanis is the most popular Latvian name, so it's John in Latvian. So I copied these ones. See, Yanis equals Yanis, false. What could go wrong? So why there are duplicates? Any ideas?
Correlation.
No, so these are not sorting anything, so these are just comparing.
The letter R can be represented different ways in Unicode, finally.
Yeah, so that's really so. So initially I thought that's some different A, just looking very similarly. But then I found out that this is actually one Yanis is 6 characters. I see there just 5. Other is 5. And what it is that actually in Unicode, so you can represent some letters also. Letter A, you can represent a duplicate A plus this macron character, so which is displayed together. Yeah, but so these are two different characters. And so what was the source for that? So I asked, so how did you do that? Yeah. So they said, OK, we use source tree locally for Git management. So what we investigated found out that when you enter your name in source tree and save it in your Git commit, so they somehow translate this correct A to the double A with this separate character, save it as a UTF in Git config. So why it's happening? Okay, so thank you. Yeah, so these are, just I learned that there are two only hard things in computer science, naming things, caching validation, as well as off-by-one errors, as well as the time zones, as well as Unicode special characters. And so I grant you that in each your application there's some bug regarding off-by-one or time zones or Unicode special characters. So please test these things and use crazy Unicode characters as a sample data in your data. Thank you. So now if you're interested in that, so you can go to this URL, and if you would like to use EasyBI for that, or can try it by yourself as well. Thank you.
We made it.
Yeah.